What it do, what it ain't, what it is. It is your boy, Mr. Wilson. Welcome back to the channel. We're still booming, and most importantly, we still sucker free. I did want to share some thoughts of the preseason finale and the preseason in general. Um, there's a lot of positives. There are some negatives, but I try to keep it optimistic here. So, welcome back to the channel. We got a good show for you all today. First, I want to talk about Beanie Bishop. There was a situation that came out regarding the last preseason game where Beanie was told that he would be given a shot. Terrell Austin went to him. Yeah, this is the best, this is the biggest game of your career. We're going to give you a chance and this, that, and the third. Turns out Beanie took no snaps. Beanie played no snaps against the Panthers. I want to talk about the starting defense struggles in the game. I want to talk about Yahya Black, and how he had just a phenomenal, not only preseason finale, but preseason, training camp, everything. He's truly come in and put the work in and done a great job. I want to talk about Skyler Thompson. His preseason was phenomenal. I think he's the MVP of the preseason. I want to talk about a few preseason positives. I want to also discuss some things that I've talked about before in regards to like trade rumors, particularly with Terry McLaurin and the Redskins, and how people told me, "Oh man, you're crazy. It'll never happen." And I'm just like, anything's possible, champ. Everybody has a price tag. Beanie was told by defensive coordinator Terrell Austin that this game was going to be big for him, and Beanie did not play a snap. And I feel like that's messed up because I believe Beanie deserved an opportunity. Beanie for us last year was like a bright spot. He had some clutch plays. He had some great interceptions, and I just really believe in loyalty. And I feel as though Beanie deserved an opportunity to make the 53-man roster. Now, unless he already made the 53-man roster, that's to be determined. We brought in a lot of all pro guys, a lot of guys with, playoff experience, Super Bowl victories, Super Bowl experience. And so, I get it. He got moved down the depth chart, and I'm not saying by any means to just give him a spot, but I'm saying he deserved an opportunity to make the roster based on his performance last year. And the thought process behind that was just so that way he can learn behind some veterans. The same way I want Will Howard to learn behind Aaron Rodgers, the same way I want Derrick Harmon to learn behind and Yahya Black to learn behind Cam Hayward. I would have loved for Beanie to have had the opportunity to learn behind the Darius Slays, to learn behind Juan Thornhill, Jalen Ramsey. Like, I would have loved to have seen that for his development, because the reality is, man, it's only his second year. We're going to need guys to carry the torch. And so, why not let him do some on the job training with some skilled veterans? And so I just really believed he deserved a shot. He's a good kid. He's professional. You haven't heard no nonsense coming, in regards to him. And so, I just believe in just rewarding guys and giving people opportunities. So, we want to talk about like the defensive struggles. First team defense didn't look the best. You know what I mean? I didn't, want them to go out there and just play lights out, and risk injury and things like that. But I did want them to exert some kind of dominance against the Panthers, especially considering the fact that they was playing their backups. Like, these are backup players. Some of these guys from the Panthers camp that was playing against the starting defense won't even make the team, or they might be moved from the Panthers for whatever reason, trades or whatever, released. So it's just like, why are we? It just appeared as though we were struggling a little bit more than I would have liked. And, who would have known, Pierre caught an interception in the end zone. Good for him because, you know, he hasn't had that much, bright spots or film, and people like cut him, and I get it. Last year he was thrown into like a rotation that was not fair because he was tasked with guarding some elite talent when we had that crazy stretch of like 3 games in 10 days or whatever that was. He was out there for a large majority of that. I mean, and he was getting annihilated, so hopefully, with better talent, the coaches can put him in a better spot to succeed. I do think there's talent there, and I think he's a good guy as well. So just Pierre caught that interception, man. But if he hadn't caught the interception, man, we would have went down 10-0 against the Panthers, and we had our starting defense in playing against them dudes. So wouldn't have been a good look at all. So I'm happy that we won the game, but we gotta break it down to like what was actually going on out there. But I do look forward to seeing our true starting defense. They had a lot of guys that were starters out there, but it wasn't like our actual starting defense. Jalen Ramsey picking up an unnecessary roughness, I'm okay with that because one thing that we've lacked in the secondary is like an enforcer, like somebody that people are scared of. And Jalen Ramsey is that. He's that wild card. He's that unpredictable guy. You never know what he's going to do. And so he's that leader. He's that wild card. You know what I'm saying? And I can't wait to see Juan Thornhill, Deshaun Elliott, Jalen Ramsey, Slay, and JPJ. Like, I'm really looking forward to that. I know a lot of you all are as well. In addition to the front seven, because, man, this is the best secondary we've had in a long time. And I'm not comparing anybody to the '08 Steelers. I'm just saying this is the best secondary we've had in a very, very long time. So I'm really looking forward to it. So yeah, they struggled a little bit more than I would have liked for them to have struggled. But on the bright side, it's still preseason, so the game don't really count. It gives them an opportunity to go back, learn, figure out what they were doing, and go from there. I want to talk about Derrick Harmon and how we dodged a major situation with him. At first, man, when we saw him on the cart, and we saw his facial expression, man, we thought his season was over. But he came back on the sideline. He was laughing and joking with, TJ and the guys. And so I was very happy to see that he was under his, he was walking under his own, power, no crutches or anything like that. No walking boots or anything like that, So I was happy to see that. The young man has gone through a lot. Draft night, the best night of his life, supposed to have been the best night of his life. He lost his mother, and as somebody that has lost a lot of loved ones, the grieving process has no time limit. There is no timeline of you should be in this stage of grieving or anything like that. The biggest thing I've learned is that you just got to have healthy outlets to get through the grieving process, or not even get through, better manage the grieving process. And so we all know football for him, that's probably his positive outlet that he has. It's a huge distraction. Sometimes you just got to distract yourself. I know when I lost my brother, I worked the most I have ever worked ever in my life. I was working 7 days a week, 18-hour tours. Like, I just worked because that was how I managed that at that time. And then I, began getting into cycling. I, began getting into photography and videography and things of that nature. So I just began to develop more layers of happiness that I could tap on, you know what I'm saying, whenever I was having a bad day. So, you know, I'm glad Derrick is okay. And I'm hoping he can get back on the field sooner than later. So that way he can get back to just, you know, better managing his situation. But I do want to talk about Yahya Black and, you know, how he stepped in and how he was just like a one-man wrecking ball, like destroying anything that they threw at him. You know, the guy is talented, man. This is a little overreaction, but when I think of Derrick Harmon and when I think of Yahya Black, the first person I think of is Mean Joe Green, y'all. Like, they are all similar in stature. They are just like mountains of men. They are just huge. And so, you know, we have two of these guys, not saying they're Mean Joe Green or anything like that, but they are comparable in size. And if they can turn that into like actual like playing ability, man, yo, we got a couple steals in this draft from Yahya Black to Will Howard. You know, Yahya Black was a 5th round draft pick. You know, Will Howard, we all know he was a 6th round. But I'm just saying, like, we got a couple steals. Jack Sawyer fell to us. Like, what? We have depth on this team that I think as the season progresses, people will begin to recognize. But, man, we are in a phenomenal place. And now we got Cam back. Guess who's back? Back again. Cam is back. Tell your friends. Like, I'm very happy to see that Cam is back. You know, I don't know all the contract, you know, situation and stuff like that. But, you know, Aaron Rodgers called him out on his show. You know, he was like, yeah, everything's about Cam and his money.
I haven't had a center make calls before, but sometimes he needs to trust me that I might see it a little better with my years of wisdom and my grades and my experience than maybe what Pat told him to do on this specific play. I love having him in there. He's a real steady guy. Again, I would just love to see him use that voice. I always tell him, I said, nobody can whip you up front. Like, you could whoop everybody up front. He's a wrestler. I'm talking about on the offensive side of the ball. Offensive side of the ball. I think he'd have a good chance of whipping everybody.
Okay.
DK
didn't seem to like that.
Yeah.
No, I'm talking about the line.
Oh, I
thought he was talking about me, so I
talking
thought
about the line.
bro.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. It's all about you and your money.
Right.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, Cam Hayward back at practice, full participant. So, you know, that's leadership. You know, you need guys. Like, a lot of people get mad about being called out about stuff. Like, bro, you need people that's not scared to tell you what it is. You need people that's not scared to tell you your stuff stinks right now. You know what I'm saying? And if you don't accept that, then you're just not accountable for your actions and what you got going on. So yeah, big ups to Aaron for calling Cam out, and shout outs to Cam for accepting that, you know what I'm saying, that interaction, taking accountability and stepping back up to being the team captain that he is. You know, I want to talk about Skyler Thompson and how this young man, you know, a lot of people question why he even came to Pittsburgh, like what's the point? And, you know, he in this preseason, to me, is the MVP. He stepped up big time. You know, Mason had a couple of rough drives. He threw a couple of interceptions, and Skyler came in, and he just absolutely balled out. Like, and we can say, oh man, he played against, you know, whoever he played against. And to me, it don't matter, because all Skyler can do is play against whoever they put in front of him. And Skyler Thompson absolutely 1,000% did a great job. And quite frankly, you know, we got to stop comparing guys that played on bad teams to what they can do in our uniform. Like, quite frankly, I don't care where they came from. As long as you put this uniform on, I'm going to root for you. And, you know, we have to have that mentality. Skyler played for a bad team. What it was. They were dealing with a lot of injuries and things of that nature. and that offense wasn't built for him. So, he come to Pittsburgh and he balls out. There's nothing to be negative about. If anything, it's going to make Mason get on his game. It's going to make Mason be better. Iron sharpens iron. I'm very happy to see that there's the guys behind Mason that can play, because Mason can't get complacent. You know what I'm saying? Aaron Rodgers, I'm sure he's telling them all this stuff, but that quarterback room is highly competitive right now. And I'm happy to see it as a fan, because everywhere you look on this depth chart, there is somebody behind the starters that can play major minutes. And that's what you want as a team. That's how you win championships, y'all. The Eagles last year were deep. Like that 53 man roster is so crucial. Like, you need that. Everyone is important, man. Everyone's important. So yeah, Skylar definitely was the preseason MVP. He deserves all the praise and that nature, because he did a great job. Roman Wilson had a great preseason. Scotty Miller had a great preseason. Darnell Washington, they had a great red zone attack against the Jaguars. You see, Derrick Harmon, he came in, he played great. Y.A. Black, we just talked about him. Jack Sawyer, guys all over the field, man, just making plays, stepping up big time, and just having a good time, yo. Like, I didn't need for us to be undefeated in preseason, because, that year with Kenny Pickett, we saw what that led to. So I'm okay with seeing struggles and things of that nature that the team needs to work on, and I expect for them to work on it. It didn't have to be perfect. I just, if you're making a mistake because of lack of effort, that's one thing. But if you're going full speed and making mistakes, I'm okay with that. Compared to what I've seen in training camp, the offensive line played better. Aaron Rodgers called them out about being policemen on the field and taking care of their guys. I remember my first football camp in high school. I was a lineman, and the quarterback's mother came up to me and said, "Please protect my son. Please take care of my baby." And I was like, wow, like that is such like a major responsibility. You got to take pride in that, yo. Like, you got to take pride in that. Like, people are expecting for you guys, you know what I'm saying? You ain't got to be a bully, but you got to be a protector. You got to take pride in that, because that responsibility of being a protector is not given to everyone. And so you got to take care of everybody, from your quarterback to your running back to your wide receiver. It all starts with the big dogs on that line. You know what I mean? And so, Mason McCormick and Frazier, they have the right mentality. They'll play, they play hard. They have good motors, and I love that. And, I can't wait to see Broderick, you know what I'm saying, and truly embrace that and go full speed on that. Fautano, you know what I'm saying, he's doing his thing. And Siamalu, he's back. We'll see if he's actually healthy this year. But, we have young guys, like, except for Siamalu, the rest of those guys are like second and third year players. Like, yeah, man, like, if they can form some chemistry, man, we have a good line for years to come. And, you just keep adding to it. You keep adding pieces to it. You got to reload the offensive line the same way they've reloaded the linebackers and edge rushers and defensive linemen. We got to reload that secondary. Like, so I look forward to seeing what the offensive line does in this season. Looking to see who steps up. You know what I'm saying? Because people that you expect to step up don't always step up. It could be somebody else that we're not even mentioning right now. So, but yeah. It was good to see them have some sparks of greatness, and I look forward to seeing them having more. Last thing I want to talk about today is the fact that anything's possible. People talking about, when I put out my content on Terry McLaurin, oh, it'll never happen. We don't have the cap space for that. Look, man, if we're talking about being all in, anything is absolutely possible. Anything is absolutely possible when you're talking about being all in. The Commanders sent over a trade offer. It included Pat Freiermuth. It included a second-round draft pick and some money, on the table. Like, I just feel like that's too much to ask for. Omar Khan is very good at what he's been doing for this team. He deserves more credit for what he's been doing. So it appears as though he's tabled that for now. But they could go back and touch back on that, depending on how the wide receiver room is looking. But if these guys play the way they played in preseason, and Roman Wilson was lighting up starters. He wasn't playing against backups. He was playing against starters. Roman Wilson and Calvin Austin III pick up where they left off, man. Hey, yo, I am very excited about this wide receiver room. But, of course, you know, Terry McLaurin is Terry McLaurin. If you can get him, you get him. But I just believe they was asking for way too much. It is possible. It almost happened. And I would have loved to have made a video about it happening, but unfortunately it did not. This is the last thing I want to talk about today. I do want to say thank you to everyone, and I do mean everyone that has subscribed to this channel, that has followed all my social pages and things of that nature, that have left likes, that have left comments, that has showed love. You know, it's truly unexpected, but, you know, you all encourage me to try to put out the best possible product I can put out. And so, you know, that's what I intend to do. That's what I try to keep doing. As you can see, I'm going with like a little bit of a different look, just trying to get better at what I'm doing. Same way I'm asking these players to do that, I got to do that. I have to take accountability in what I'm doing and put out better product as well. And just do my thing, get swaggy with it. So I do want to say thank you to each and every one of you. I don't have the 1K balloons, but you know what I'm saying? I guess we got to start this road to 2,000 now. We got to just keep going. You know what I'm saying? Like, as you reach goals, you got to set new goals and push towards those goals. Put your head down and keep working. So I do appreciate y'all. That does conclude my show. I hope you all stay up, you stay blessed, and you stay sucker free. It is your boy, Mr. Wilson. I'm signing off, and I'll holler at you on the next one. Peace.